Good evening, everyone. Today is March 21st, 2023, and we're excited to welcome you to the Behavioral Health Workforce Education and Training Interprofessional Integrated Health Education Series. Okay.
Recording in progress.
We have a few people joining, so give us 1 second. This program is supported by the Health Resources and Services Administration, HRSA, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and our grant numbers are listed for your review. An overview of tonight's agenda. I'm Dr. Katherine Brown. I'll be serving as your moderator. We will have a welcome by Mr. Ross Fleming III, Director of Behavioral Health Practice at Meharry Medical College, an introduction of our presenter by Mrs. Veronica Burns, and then our presenter, Dr. Loral Burns, followed by a Q&A. As a gentle reminder, please mute your microphones during the presentation. We do invite you to use the chat box for questions and comments. At this time, please give a virtual introduction by typing your name, organization, city, and state in the chat box. Let's connect on social media. Please follow us on Twitter at PCTCOP. If you hear something exciting, and we know that you will, share it on social media using our hashtag PCTCOP. We also invite you to like our Twitter page, and we will follow you back. As a reminder, this is part of our monthly Behavioral Health Workforce Education and Training Interprofessional Integrated Health Education Series. Our next lecture series will be April 18th, 2023. So please save the date. Guess what's happening? Excitement is in the air because spring is going pink. Yes, you heard it. On April 8th, 2023, from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. CST, we invite you to join us on the campus of Meharry Medical College for cancer survivorship and COVID-19. It's a summit, it's free, and it won't be the same without you. So register today by clicking the QR code. We look forward to seeing you there. We are so excited that this program is part of a collaboration. All of our websites are listed for your review. Meet the team. We work under the leadership of Dr. Patricia Matthews Juarez. I am Dr. Katherine Brown, Director of Communities of Practice and Dissemination for the National Center for Medical Education, Development, and Research at Meharry Medical College, where I also serve as Assistant Professor in the Department of Family and Community Medicine. Meet our psychiatry team, our Family and Community Medicine team, more of our amazing team members, our AHEC team, and the BHWET administration team. At this time, I'm excited to bring forward Mr. Ross Fleming III. Welcome, Mr. Fleming.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Behavioral Health Workforce Education Training Lecture Series. As Dr. Brown just shared, I serve as a Director of Behavioral Health Practice. Tonight's topic, social media in the health professions, beyond building your personal brand. Now, this is through an integrated health approach. The Departments of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences and the Family Community Medicine have collaborated with the Tennessee Area education centers to train residents, students, scholars, and other health professionals to work with persons in rural, vulnerable, and medically underserved communities. This approach will expand the number of behavioral health, family medicine, and other health professionals who will stay and work in primary care settings in Tennessee, as well as in rural and medically underserved communities nationwide. Tonight, we have an opportunity to expand our residents, students, scholars, as well as others training as we hear from a subject matter expert in healthcare social media. I hope you will listen and engage in this very important topic. And now I would like to introduce you to Veronica Burns.
Good evening, and it is my pleasure and honor to introduce our presenter tonight. Dr. Loral Burns is a clinician, investigator, and assistant professor at NYU College of Dentistry. She is a diplomat of the American Board of Endodontics. Dr. Burns grew up here in Nashville and is a graduate of Martin Luther King Magnet High School, just down the road from Meharry. Dr. Burns earned her DDS degree at NYU College of Dentistry, completed her specialty training in endodontics at the University of Pennsylvania School of Dental Medicine, and was awarded her master's degree by NYU School of Medicine. In 2019, she was selected as the American Association of Endodontists Foundation's Endodontic Educator Fellow. In 2022, she was recognized by the American Dental Education Association with the faculty award for a junior faculty award. Dr. Burns' research interests include endodontic treatment outcomes, access to dental care, clinical decision-making, and dental education. Her research was funded by the National Institute of Health, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the American Dental Education Association. Her research on social media use in dentistry has been published in the Journal of Dental Education and the Journal of Medical Internet Research. Dr. Burns maintains a part-time practice limited to endodontics in New York. Tonight's presentation is Social Media in Health Professions Beyond Building Your Personal Brand. Please welcome our presenter, who is also my daughter, Dr. Loral Burns.
Hello, and thank you for the warm welcome. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my slides. And I'm going to shift my camera as well. You'll see the top of my head for just a second. Let's see here. I'm sharing screen and I'm going to play slideshow. Mr. Fleming, can you confirm that we see what we plan to see? That you're seeing slides, not notes?
I see you.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me this evening, and thank you to Mr. Fleming for inviting me to present at Meharry Medical College as part of the Behavioral Health Workforce Education Training Lecture Series. So tonight, we'll be talking about social media. And I know you've had an amazing and interactive lecture given by Dr. Katherine Brown on social media previously. I believe she discussed some best practices for building your brand as part of her presentation. But today, I will challenge you to look beyond your personal brand when thinking about social media. So full disclosure, I am not a social media influencer. I don't have a professional social media account beyond a standard LinkedIn page. However, I am an avid user of social media. I see its values, I see its pitfalls, and I hope that today's presentation not only keeps your attention, but also opens your eyes to some new perspectives and sparks some conversation for us. So today's learning objectives will be to describe the scope of social media's impact on the health professions, to describe both the positive and negative impacts of social media on the health professions, and to describe the evolution of social media and its implications for clinical practice. Now, in the spirit of interprofessional collaboration, this presentation will be given through the lens of dentistry, with a particular focus on my clinical specialty of endodontics. However, I challenge you to draw parallels between the things that I highlight in this presentation and your own health professional disciplines. Additionally, I remind you that oral health is a window to systemic health. Oral health is associated with several chronic diseases, particularly cardiovascular disease, and periodontal health has been shown to have a bidirectional relationship with a patient's diabetic status. Further, connections can be made between oral health and behavioral health. Dental appearance is highly associated with a person's self-confidence and job prospects. Further, odontalgia, or toothache, is a stressful and intensely painful experience, often leading to absences from work or school, and is estimated to affect 12% or more of the population at any given time, with pain levels reported to being at comparable levels to backache and at higher levels than headache and earache, for some context. So back to endodontics so that we're on the same page here. Endodontics is a branch of dentistry concerned with diseases and injuries of the dental pulp. Endodontists are specialists in diagnosing tooth pain and performing root canal treatment. Now, let's start with a short video on endodontics so that we are all on the same page moving forward into the rest of the presentation. Now, this video was commissioned by the American Association of Endodontists as a patient education tool and is available on, you guessed it, social media, particularly YouTube. We'll talk a lot more about YouTube as an educational tool later in the presentation, but let's start with our video here. Mr. Fleming confirming that you can hear.
Our job isn't always easy. Often our patients are in a great deal of pain. Managing these emotions and stresses can put enormous pressure on us as providers. These situations often require a sense of urgency, yet we must maintain our compassion and composure to provide the best care. Fortunately, our training prepares us to manage these exact scenarios. Endodontics residency provides us with the knowledge to treat medically complex patients, all while using advanced techniques and technologies. Ultimately, we partner with general dentists to save teeth and to alleviate dental pain. I'm Dr. Brooke Blitcher. I am Dr. Rebecca Lucier, and we are endodontists. Endodontists are specialists in saving teeth. They are highly trained dental professionals with a minimum of 2 additional years of training beyond dental school. To put this into perspective, education in endodontics takes 2.5 times longer than the average engineering degree. This additional training benefits patients even before any treatment is administered, as it facilitates the accurate and thoughtful diagnosis of orofacial pain. Endodontists' advanced experience and technical skill ensure precise and efficient root canal treatment. Endodontists work in a microscopic environment inside teeth and do so with the aid of advanced materials and technology to guide treatment primarily with the operating microscope. In real terms, the scale in which endodontists work approximately equals the size of FDR's ear on the dime, the thinnest and smallest in diameter of all U.S. currency. Endodontists utilize dental dams for all root canal treatment. Not only does this enhance visual contrast to access the tooth, but more importantly, the dental dam prevents microbial contamination from the oral cavity. Placing a dental dam to isolate a tooth is similar to wearing a poncho, comfortable yet protective. While preventing contamination of the tooth with a dental dam is one thing, removing existing intracanal microbes is another. Endodontists utilize NASA technology and the instruments they use to navigate through root canal spaces and remove debris. This nickel titanium technology used in satellites is flexible and has shape memory. Endodontists also utilize high-frequency ultrasonic instruments to properly irrigate canals, further removing debris. Ultrasonics use fast, alternating motions to agitate cleaning solution, analogous to using a pulsating electric toothbrush inside the root canal space. Finally, endodontists also utilize advanced digital imaging. Like filtering photos on your cell phone, they can immediately enhance images to evaluate the internal dental structures. Additionally, 3D imaging is becoming more widely utilized among endodontists to evaluate complex root anatomies and better plan patient treatment. To find an endodontist who specializes in saving teeth, visit AAE.org.
Okay, so thanks for watching that video. Not only is it an example of social media as an educational tool, it gets us on the same page as we move into the presentation by starting with a case study. So like I said, that video commissioned by the American Association of Endodontists was used to educate, the lay public, the general population, and to give them confidence that endodontic treatment, specifically root canal treatment, is a safe, highly effective procedure that's scientific and technologically informed. So that will help contextualize this case study moving forward. So to start, I'll read this statement. Basically, it turned out that I had 3 massively infected teeth that were all asymptomatic. I actually had 3 of my teeth extracted because it was clear to me that that was the solution as opposed to getting a root canal after root canal. Now, this statement was made by a woman in her early 30s who elected to have 3 teeth, number 6, 8, and 11 for the dentists in the audience, extracted after dental trauma resulting from a biking accident. Now, the extraction of these teeth could have been a sad, isolated incident, except for the fact that this woman is a social media influencer. Meet Hannah Brosman, the influencer who wrote the statement in the previous slide. And Hannah is one of the many influencers that I follow on social media for lifestyle, beauty, and wellness insights. Her account has a verified badge, which is a check mark that means that Instagram has confirmed that an account is an authentic presence of the public figure, celebrity, or brand it represents. The factors that Instagram assesses when determining if an account should be verified include authenticity, uniqueness, completion, and notability. Lastly, Hannah has 961,000 followers. So moving forward, I mentioned that I follow her on Instagram, and I was surprised to come across this post while scrolling through my feed just before the start of the pandemic. In this post, Hannah shared through video and text about having her teeth removed after a biking accident 5 years prior. This post had almost 106,000 views. Now, the context of this post was so perplexing to me that a woman in her 30s would elect to have her teeth extracted after dental trauma was so perplexing to me that I wanted to know more. So I started to read through the comments of this post. One comment describes how she used 3D CBCT imaging to have her dental infections identified. The comment went on to describe how she elected to have her teeth extracted after reading the book, The Hidden Epidemic by Dr. Thomas Levy, a board-certified cardiologist. This statement made by the commenter shows the power of statements made by social media influencers. The commenter notes, I haven't read it, referring to the book by Dr. Levy, the cardiologist, but from Hannah's summary, it makes sense. So, as a quick aside, I took some time to look up this book by Dr. Levy and found a book review that described it as the answer to critics of the root cause. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the documentary, The Root Cause. It was on Netflix for some time in 2019 and was peddling this concept of a focal infection theory that suggested that infections in the teeth could lead to major health implications other places in the body. And this documentary was removed from Netflix in 2019 after lobbying by the American Association of Endodontists because it lacked scientific evidence that was presented to support its claims that root canal therapy can cause cancer, heart disease, and chronic illnesses. So back to Hannah, who has now changed social media platforms to share her story on YouTube. In this 29-minute video interview posted on YouTube, Hannah is recounting a consultation that she had with a physician after experiencing bouts of chronic fatigue and difficulty conceiving. After some discussion, the physician she consulted with suggested to Hannah that her symptoms may be coming from a major infection. Once Hannah divulges that she's had a history of dental trauma, he sends her for 3D CBCT imaging and instructs her to have the imaging interpreted at a self-described natural dentistry practice. I'm just going to have you listen to the interview for a minute and a half. Let's see here.
And he said, I think you have a really major infection. And he's like, I won't know for certain, but these are the next steps I want you to take. So he said, there is a practice in a dental practice in Austin, outside of Austin, Texas, that he wanted me to go see. And I thought to myself, what? Like, I'm based in New York. Like, that's so crazy. He said, listen, it's not that I don't trust people in New York. There are good people in New York I can send you to, but the scan that I'm asking you to get, people in New York don't know how to read it the way these people outside of Austin do. And I thought to myself, what does that even mean? He said, well, you have to think about the dental industry. The number one surgery that's performed amongst the dental is a root canal. And that's like, tried, true, that doctors make money off of that. And like, that is like the way people go. But he wanted someone to read this scan whose objective was not just to go straight to root canals for a lot of reasons, but he felt that my infection could be so bad that a root canal actually wouldn't really even get to the root of the issue. And actually I had already.
So to bring this full circle, this is how Hannah, the influencer, decided to extract 3 of her natural teeth rather than saving them with root canal therapy. She notes, it turns out I had 3 massively infected teeth. The infection was so intense that the natural dentist recommendation was that I have those teeth extracted. The natural dentist said, I can tell you that when I extract your teeth, we will get rid of this infection 100%. So, any endodontist would tell you that this was a mistake, that a woman in her early 30s electing to have her front teeth extracted rather than saving them with root canal therapy would have seriously negative implications in the long term. But this was the advice that not only that Hannah received, but that she advertised all over social media. So, as a result of Hannah's storytelling, amplified by the strong following that she commands on social media, remember we said she had 961,000 followers, she was selected to be the face of Pro Enamel Toothpaste in 2021. Now, Hannah is one of the most sought after influencers by consumer product companies, and influencing is her full-time job, and it's funded by the income she generates off of lucrative deals such as this. So I hope your interest is piqued. I hope that throughout that case study, you were able to consider parallels of this case study to your own clinical disciplines, maybe most relevant, the COVID-19 pandemic and the misinformation associated in media and social media there by ill-informed spreaders of information. But the case study was some quick insight into the topics that we're going to cover today, inclusive of the power of social media, the role of influencers and key opinion leaders, as well as the dangers of misinformation. And I'm going to break the presentation into 3 sections. First, we'll talk about the evolution of social media for context. Then we'll discuss the scope of social media's impact on the health professions. And lastly, we'll conclude with implications for clinical practice. So to start, let's talk about the evolution of social media. So in 2005, just 5% of American adults use social media. Today, 72% of the public uses at least one of these platforms. YouTube was founded in 2005. In 2006, Facebook became open to the general public. The tipping point of popularity for Twitter was in 2007. Instagram was launched in late 2010. And the last platform that I'll introduce, TikTok, was launched in 2016, but its popularity has exploded over the past few years. This is a look of how social media use has changed over time by age group. You can see a steady increase in social media use by all age groups up until around 2014. After which, social media use by younger users plateaus, and in the case of 18 to 29-year-olds begins to decline. Alternatively, in the older cohorts, the use of social media is still on the rise, and the age gaps in social media use are closing. Now, let's take a look at social media use by platform. I introduced Instagram and YouTube in the case study at the beginning of the presentation. And I'll speak more about YouTube and Twitter later in the presentation, but right now I'd like to pause and take a quick look at TikTok. So in the social media timeline slide, I mentioned that while TikTok was launched in 2016, its popularity has exploded over the past few years, especially amongst Generation Z, the oldest of which are now health professional students. A recent New York Times article discussed that for Gen Z, TikTok is the new search engine, and Google has taken notice. And so for those of you who don't know, TikTok is a short form video hosting service where videos can range in length from 15 seconds to 10 minutes. So now that we have a lay of the land, let's move on to discussing the scope of social media's impact on the health professions, including my area of clinical focus, endodontics. Just as a reminder, as I present this information, I challenge you to draw parallels to your own disciplines. We'll discuss these parallels at the end of the lecture. First, let's explore social media as a learning tool. I'll use dentistry as an example. So the discussion of social media in the health professions, including dentistry, is nothing new. In 2012, when social media use was nothing compared to what it is today, this paper in the Journal of Dental Education discussed its implications. The author wrote that encouraging dental faculty to harness the potential and reach of Web 2.0 is especially important, as health professional students need to know how to find, sort, analyze, discuss, critique, and create this type of information. If you read this paper in its entirety, the discussion of social media sounds very similar to the discussion we are having in health professional education today. And I challenge that as educators, we have been too slow to change in a technological society that is advancing at rapid pace. In 2019, I partnered with colleagues from 4 other dental schools to perform a quantitative survey study assessing students' use of YouTube to learn about clinical dental procedures. Now, I had the idea for this study after teaching a student in the predoctoral clinic who told me before performing a root canal therapy for the first time, "Dr. Burns, I've got this. I've watched a ton of YouTube videos." And in this study, we found that 80% of survey respondents were between the ages of 23 and 30. And over 99% of survey respondents, which were dental students, used YouTube primarily for entertainment. Let's take a quick detour. In our study, we saw that 99% of students surveyed used YouTube. Our student population was primarily between the ages of 23 and 30. Pretty normal for health professional trainees. We can compare that 99% YouTube use in my study to the national average for YouTube use by age group in the United States. And you can see that 99% is a bit high, but in the 23 to 30 age range, use of YouTube is well over 90%. So back to the study findings. We found that 95% of dental student respondents considered YouTube videos on clinical dental procedures to be a helpful learning tool. And notably, we found no statistically significant differences in responses by dental institutions or between third and fourth year dental students for this question. Further, we found that dental students were most likely to use YouTube as a learning tool before attempting a clinical procedure on a patient for the first time, or when they needed a refresher on a clinical procedure they had not performed recently. So taking a step back, maybe we could already suspect that students were using YouTube as a learning tool for clinical procedures, but the prevalence at 95% was eye-opening. Further, only about 1/3 of respondents reported watching videos produced by US dental schools, and over 1/3 were unsure or did not consider the videos that they watched on YouTube to be evidence-based. So to wrap this study up, 38% of respondents reported that their dental school faculty recommended YouTube as a learning tool, but 89% of student respondents wanted their dental school faculty to post tutorials on clinical procedures to social media. So I'm curious to hear at the end if there are parallels to what you've seen in your experience as educators of health professionals. So while looking at the data from the previous study, I noticed that endodontic procedures were one of the most common procedures for which students were using YouTube as a learning resource. And as an endodontic educator, I wanted to explore this more. This time, I took a qualitative approach and held focus group interviews with our fourth-year dental students to learn how they were using YouTube to learn about endodontics specifically. We found that the most frequently cited goal of YouTube use was to increase understanding of procedural flow. Other frequently cited goals were visualization, as we saw in the initial video that described endodontics. Endodontics occurs under a microscopic field, so visualization of the field is oftentimes a barrier to those who aren't working under microscopes, such as dental students. And they wanted to explore different clinical techniques, I think something we can all relate to despite our discipline. So in accordance with our 2020 study, most students reported using YouTube before their first time completing an endodontic procedure or before their first time performing root canal therapy on a specific tooth type. The most commonly communicated benefit of YouTube is that it offers condensed video content that is readily available and easy to access. Students preferred videos where the procedures were performed on live patients and videos that were 5 minutes or less in duration. So attention spans are short here. And things began to get really interesting when we asked them about search strategies. We learned that students were finding content by using keywords such as root canal, paired with tooth number or tooth type to search for tailored endodontic content. And considering the overwhelming volume of available information on YouTube, we asked students how they decided which videos to watch. We learned that they use the number of video views or likes to help determine if they would spend time watching a video. Once they watched the video, they reviewed the comments, compared the content of several videos, and used faculty as resources to help assess the quality or validity of the content. Alarming, but also intriguing. So now let's discuss social media as a research tool. The example that I will discuss in this section is a paper that I published last year on dental care affordability. And Twitter is a social media platform of focus here. So in the United States, the financial barriers to accessing dental care are higher than any other type of healthcare service. And the percentage of the population without dental insurance is more than twice that of those who are medically uninsured. And social media is increasingly becoming an essential tool for public health communication, as I'm sure you all know. Twitter is a free social media service where people communicate their daily thoughts and behaviors in short 280-character messages called tweets. With over 68 million active monthly users in the United States, Twitter offers rich population-based data for tracking concerns of public health significance. Twitter data emerge from real-world social environments, which encompass a large and diverse range of people without any prompting from researchers. So in this study, I partnered with a computer scientist who helped me collect tweets posted to Twitter between September 2017 and September 2021. The tweets were collected using an open source web scraper. And search terms were generated to identify tweets that discussed financial considerations associated with dental treatment. In the mixed method analysis, data were analyzed qualitatively using both deductive and inductive approaches. And the most prevalent themes that emerged from the qualitative analysis were general sentiments about delaying or foregoing dental care due to lack of affordability, payment strategies, discussions about dental insurance, and policy statements. And then quantitative data analyses included the geographic distribution of tweets by state, volume analysis of tweets over time, and distribution of tweets by content theme. So in addition to the tweets, we also collected the metadata associated with the tweets, such as the coordinates from which the tweets were made. And we limited our sample to only tweets posted in the United States based on coordinate. And so this map that you see here with the blue dots is a geographic distribution of all the tweets in our study. And California, Texas, Florida, and New York emerged as the states with the most tweets, which makes sense because they're some of the most populous states. But this was an interesting thing that we could do by collecting the metadata associated with the tweets. And so the volume and thematic trends of the tweets that we collected in the study corresponded to relevant societal events, including the COVID-19 pandemic and debates on healthcare policy resulting from the election of President Biden. So COVID-19 resulted in dental office closures across the country in the spring and summer of 2020, with the greatest decline in weekly visits compared with 2019 observed during the week of April 12, 2020. And this trend with dental closures correspond to the quantitative findings of my study, in which the lowest number of tweets were observed in April of 2020. In September of 2021, there were 3.4 times the monthly average number of tweets. And we hypothesized that this increase was in a reaction to the announcement in 2021 that President Joe Biden's budget reconciliation package included funding for a standard Medicare dental benefit. Now, ultimately, the Medicare dental benefit was not included in the House of Representatives passed legislation. But you can see how societal events are corresponding to what we see in the volume of tweets over time. And the qualitative analysis revealed barriers faced by individuals to accessing dental care, strategies taken to cope with dental pain when they couldn't afford dental treatment, and public perceptions on aspect of dental care policy. And this is just a word cloud with some of the most common themes that we saw, and you can see need insurance really sticks out. So I'll share some example tweets from our study for a little bit more context. This tweeter says, "Hey, I know it's a long shot, but I just had to use my rent money to have a very badly infected tooth removed, and I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. Please help if you can." And we saw that a lot of Twitter users were trying to fundraise for their dental treatments via social media. Another user tweets. They tweet at username, which is an insurance company. Will not cover the ER visit because it's dental related, and I will have to pay close to a $2,000 hospital bill. All they did was examine me and prescribe painkiller and antibiotics. How is this right? Everything this needs to change. And so this is a disgruntled user that probably did not have dental insurance, but because they had medical insurance, they went to the ER for care for their dental pain. However, the ER is not the appropriate setting to address dental pain, and all they got was painkillers and antibiotics, despite receiving a $2,000 hospital bill. Last tweet I'll share, my mom does not have insurance for dental care. Now she has an infection in her tooth. Now she needs to pay $1,504 before seeing the specialist. We don't have $1,504 in the bank. This is why we need Medicare for all. I'm angry because of this greed and corruption, hashtag Bernie 2020. And you can see how the tweets are corresponding to societal and political and policy events. So lastly, in this section of the scope of social media, we'll explore the scope of social media's impact on dentistry by looking at the role of influencer marketing. Influencer marketing has proven to be successful in the sale of consumer goods, and as a result, companies are shifting more dollars into this sector. Influencer marketing is now becoming emergent in more regulated industries, such as health and financial technology. And I think this next part of the presentation will be a real treat. So let's start off by defining some terms. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of influencer versus key opinion leader, let's first talk about the concept of an expert. As clinicians or doctors, we are all experts in our fields. So an expert is a person who is very knowledgeable or skillful in a particular area. Experts typically have authority, but often lack an organic audience. So they share their expertise more reactively. They may get asked for advice by people seeking out their expertise, such as a patient. They may get invited to speak at a conference, or they may market themselves via word of mouth. Now, the key challenge for an expert is to monetize their expertise by becoming more visible. And so now that we understand the concept of an expert, let's define influencer. This is the term that I use repeatedly to refer to Hannah in our case study. And influencers have up to millions of followers on social media, but they don't always have a deep level of expertise. They market themselves by publishing online content and engaging with their audience. And their primary source of income stems from their social media content. So that's Hannah, who we saw earlier. Now compare influencer to a key opinion leader. Key opinion leaders are more than just experts. Key opinion leaders have a following. However, when being considered by a business that may be interested in working with them, they are not held to the same standards for number of followers as an influencer. So they have a following, but not as many followers as an influencer. They also have this expertise and authority that I talked about earlier. And they usually have full-time jobs in their content areas. And key opinion leaders can be leveraged by businesses to build awareness and trust with customers or patients and grow sales. So I consulted with the head of influencer marketing at a major company in preparation for a previous presentation on this topic. And she educated me on influencer technology software, which uses search criteria to find influencers that meet the needs of campaigns that they need to staff. They use technology that allows them to assess the influencers and their follower base and the impact that they have. And influencer technology software, such as the one presented here, Tagger, are business-to-business platforms that are used in combination with the marketer's qualitative knowledge of the industry. But because health is a newly emerging industry for influencer marketing at this time, health companies are hiring the same influencer marketers that staff and run consumer goods campaigns. So in this case, the head of influencer marketing that I consulted with has tons of experience. But because there are no influencer marketers with experience or expertise in the health professions at this time, even though her normal day-to-day is on beauty, she's oftentimes asked to find an influencer for health campaigns. And so in these cases, the marketer is going to be more reliant on the technological platforms that they have at their disposal because they don't have as much content knowledge in the health professions. And so in the next few slides, I'll show some of the analytics from this software Tagger on publicly available social media profiles relevant to dentistry. And we'll talk about how we can translate that to some of your disciplines at the end of the presentation. So with their followings, any of the individual dentists that I'll present could be tapped as what I called key opinion leaders. Let's start by looking at a general dentist with one of the largest social media followings I have ever seen. Dr. Daniel, based in New York City, I actually went to dental school with him, has one of the largest followings that I have ever seen. And so we're going to look at several types of these analyses. So let me orient you to what we're looking at. So what I have highlighted in red here is follower clout by platform. And on Instagram and Facebook, he is considered to be a mid-tier influencer. However, on TikTok, with over 1 million followers, he is considered to be a mega influencer. Sorry. So TikTok here, he's a mega influencer. In addition to follower count, influencer marketers also analyze how many of a person's followers are authentic versus purchase followers or bots, and the software can assess this. And so 90% plus is the benchmark for an authentic following that companies typically use. So you can see here, Dr. Daniel has a very authentic following at 94% of real followers. Next, let's look at engagement rate. This here, highlighted in red, is an indicator of the percentage of followers that interact with your posts. Here in gray is the industry benchmark, and blue is the individual profile's engagement rate. The rest of this page is just standard demographic data. These are the outputs that the software auto-generates. They can be further customized to include analyses on demographics of followers such as race and ethnicity. But now that you have the lay of the land, and I just want to point out here at the bottom, audience age, you can see what their ages are, and you can see what locations his followers are in. But now that you have a lay of the land, let's keep going. Next, let's look at another general dentist, Dr. Beliwis. So let's first look at his number of followers. At almost 40,000 followers, Dr. Brian is a micro influencer. He's also meeting the industry standard for the 90% plus authentic following. His engagement rate is also above the industry standard. As a reminder, blue is his performance compared to the industry standard in gray. You can see his audience, the age of his followers and their locations. So switching gears to a focus on endodontics, here is the American Association of Endodontists following. Now, the association has several platforms, and here are the follower counts. And the AAE, as an organization, unfortunately, is considered to be a nano influencer. So that social media video that they posted where we talked about our working space is the size of FDR's ear on the dime and all of this amazing stuff about endodontics and the training that we have, that video content is probably not reaching very many people if it's posted on the AAE social media platforms because their reach is minimal. And further, their Instagram engagement rate is below the industry standard. Lastly, I'll show you two endodontists who I've anonymized. So this endodontist is often referenced for their social media presence, and they have over 20,000 followers. They're considered to be a micro influencer. While this follower count is substantial for a content expert, this endodontist falls below the 90% industry standard for follower authenticity. This 86% suggests that some of this endodontist followers were purchased. Because of this fact, an influencer marketer may be less likely to hire this person as the face of their campaign. Because I was intrigued by the concept of purchasing followers, the influencer marketer and I did a growth rate analysis on this endodontist profile. It appears that this endodontist may have purchased some followers to get their profile visibility in the early stages of their social media efforts. Lastly, their engagement rate varies compared to industry standards depending on whether you look at their photo or video content. Last one, endodontist number 2, who is also well known for their use of social media. This endodontist has over 12,000 followers and is also considered to be a micro-influencer. Although this endodontist has less followers than endodontist number 1, their following is more authentic. But they fall below the industry standard for engagement. Again, comparing the endodontist engagement rate in blue to the industry standard in gray. So now that we've talked about the role of key opinion leaders and experts and influencers, let's talk about implications for clinical practice, our last section before we have some discussion. We'll discuss the following topics: social media as a tool, this concept of dysmorphia, which I'll explain more shortly, and social media policies. We've seen throughout this presentation the many ways that social media can be operationalized. Relevant to your clinical practice, social media is a marketing tool. As I'm sure Dr. Brown mentioned in her presentation, you should be mindful of your audience when using social media as a marketing tool. Who are you trying to reach and what are you marketing? Are you trying to reach the general public, or are you trying to reach your informed health professional colleagues? You should be clear about your intended audience, as this will inform the nature of the content that you post. For example, in the context of my field, I would contemplate, is the general public informed enough to be impressed, or do they even want to look at the x-rays that I post before and after my cases? Do they even know how to interpret those? Food for thought. Next, social media is a networking tool. It is a way to connect with friends and colleagues that allows us to circumvent the constraints of physical location. You can network through following others and engaging in posts through comments or even likes. As my studies on YouTube show us, and a New York Times article on TikTok alluded to, social media is an educational tool. In this day and age, video content is king. Social media can be used as a way to access content that may simply show us new procedural techniques, or for our students, increase their understanding of concepts in clinical practice. As it pertains to patients, many of my patients, especially the younger ones, watch videos on root canal therapy before their appointments as a way to reduce their anxiety. They say that watching social media video content helps them know exactly what to expect before their procedure. Lastly, as my published Twitter study and the case study that we started the presentation with showed us, social media can be used as an information gathering tool. As clinicians, it is helpful to know what the lay population, aka our patient and referral bases, think about what we do and the services that we provide. So now this topic about dysmorphia. So in the original version of my talk on this topic, I was requested to speak about endodysmorphia. And initially I was confused. I thought, is endodysmorphia an official term that I am aware of? Endo meaning endodontics. And I couldn't find an official definition for endodysmorphia, but I think I understand the concept and I think it translates to other disciplines. So I'll share my interpretation with you and see if it resonates. So first, let's assume that very few people other than my dental colleagues are able to interpret these before and after x-rays. With that in agreement, I argue if as endodontists, we are only posting images of our most perfect and beautiful radiographic cases without acknowledgement of our failures or our errors, we are creating an environment or a scenario that is ripe for dysmorphia. We are reducing the tolerance for technical imperfection amongst our referral base, and minimizing the importance of the humanistic and biologic aspects of what we do. So I challenge you to think about how this concept of dysmorphia and posts on social media could be translated to your professions. Next, if we're going to use social media to share professional content and market ourselves and market our practices, what are the rules of engagement? Social media law is an evolving field, so it's important to keep abreast of the latest developments if we are going to use social media in association with our professional work. So in the context of dentistry, the American Dental Association has published some suggestions, and I'd like you to consider these rules of engagement here and draw parallels to your own fields. I'll draw everyone's attention to number 3, as I find that it's particularly translatable. Number 3, do not post information about a patient, employee, or another individual, including a testimonial, photograph, X-ray, or even a name without the appropriate written consent, authorization, waiver, and release signed by the patient or the patient's guardian or employee. I challenge you to think, those of you who are using social media in your professional context, how many of you are employing this practice and how important you think it might be to your fields. I say that you should consider obtaining written consent or authorization from your patients or employees prior to posting their faces or their testimonials or any content to social media. So now to conclude, let's go back to Hannah, the influencer from the case study at the beginning of the presentation. We could argue that misinformation led her to extract her natural teeth and that she is now spreading misinformation about endodontic procedures. And all of that may be true. But the reality is that Hannah has almost 1 million followers, and she is on the cusp of becoming a mega influencer. Whether or not we find her to be a credible authority on dentistry or not, her following suggests that an overwhelming number of people do find her storytelling through social media to be compelling. And at the end of the day, it's about impact. She has more followers than every dentist that we reviewed, plus the American Association of Endodontists combined. And so with that said, let's get interactive. I asked Mr. Fleming ahead of this presentation to poll you all and get some names of people or organizations that you consider to be healthcare influencers or key opinion leaders. And I've looked into a few of the submitted profiles. So first, let's look at the American Public Health Association, which you guys gave me. On Twitter, they have over they're considered macro influencers with 512.3K followers. On Instagram, they have far fewer followers and are considered to be micro influencers. You gave me the name of the president of Meharry Medical College, and I could only find a Twitter profile associated with him. He has 11.4K Twitter followers, and he's considered to be a micro influencer. And Dr. Tracy Marks, who you guys also submitted, has 24.8K followers on Instagram, where she is a micro influencer, and 6,702 followers on Twitter, where she would be considered a nano influencer. So I've looked into these. Maybe we could take a few minutes for you guys to look into these additionally submitted names and research their social media pages and assess the potential reach of these healthcare key opinion leaders or influencers. And we can discuss this as well as other areas of the presentation in about 5 minutes. So I'll give you some time to look up these names. And as you see previously, I've focused on Instagram and Twitter followings. I'll give you guys a few more minutes here before we start our discussion. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other. And open things up for discussion. First, let's talk about some of the social media healthcare influencers or key opinion leaders that you guys submitted. Does anybody have any thought about the impact of their followings after the context of this presentation? Okay, well, I'll attempt to make a translation. I mean, for me as a clinician, it can be particularly discouraging, right? You spend all of this time to develop an expertise in an area, and you see that people with no content expertise have amassed these major followings and are able to command the narrative on things that you, in fact, are an expert in. And you can see how misinformation can percolate throughout social media. And so as clinicians, as healthcare providers, it's even more important that we attempt to control the narrative. And I would suggest work with some influencers to help inform them of the narrative and shape public perception. So in light of that context, and I think Dr. Brown, I know you're moderating, so.
No, we were talking in the room as well. For example, for Dr. Hildreth, we wouldn't look at just his one page. We would also look at his the Meharry pages as well, because those are all an extension of him. So on our end, when we get like the CNN and other national syndicated interviews, they come because those networks look at what we're posting. So we were doing the numbers and we were just saying we would count them differently. Or even for myself, you can't just look at, for me, my one page, because I cross-pollinate myself across 4 different brands, the LLC, the nonprofit, all these different lands. So we were just having a different conversation. So we were talking, we were engaged.
Awesome. And I think that's a relevant point. And that speaks to the conversation or the topic that we discussed about the difference between influencers and key opinion leaders, right? How key opinion leaders are also content experts, and thus they're not held to the same level of followers that an influencer who's ill-informed on the topic would be held to. So, Dr. Hildreth with maybe his 11,000 followers plus whoever follows Meharry, that could be just as impactful as a celebrity influencer with 1 million followers, because when CNN looks to see who they're going to gather expertise from, they know that he has the content expertise. He's a key opinion leader. He doesn't have to have the same number of followers as a Hannah Brossman.
Absolutely. So if you have any questions for Dr. Burns, you can put them in the chat. I'm checking the chat. I don't see anything, but you can put them in the chat or you can unmute. And then in the room, if there are any questions, I'll give you those as well. So far, I don't see any.
Well, I will provoke maybe a discussion point. Okay.
We have one question.
Yeah, my question is, who makes up the industry standard of being a micro, nano, who does that?
Right. So as I mentioned, social media marketing is now a well-established business, right? And there's a whole industry that assesses people's following and their impact. And so each platform has a different standard developed by these social media marketers of what level of impact you have based on your following. And so, for example, someone reached out to me who is a social media influencer marketer, right? And like I said, they don't have any context really on the health professions. So they're new to this health professional game, but they were trying to find a dentist with a certain demographic that they could use in a CREST campaign, right? So they said, I need a general dentist with X number of followers. They have to have X engagement rate, X authentic following, and that's how we're going to decide who to pick for our Crest toothpaste campaign. So it's an industry standard set by marketers.
Thank you.
All right, and if anyone has any questions, again, you can type them in the chat or unmute. We don't have any other questions at this time. While you're doing your next point, Dr. Burns, we are going to drop the survey because I see a couple of people have dropped off. So we want to make sure that we get that survey to them as well.
Sure. And so maybe, besides number of influencers and the impact that that might have across platforms, we could also talk about how we discuss social media as an educational tool for both trainees and the general population. We could talk about social media as a public health surveillance tool and any experience or thoughts as it relates to those aspects. I'm curious how many trainees in the audience use social media, particularly YouTube, to learn about their areas of clinical practice. Or if, as educators, you've seen students referencing using social media as an informational source.
At the National Center for Medical Education Development and Research, we actually develop clinical vignettes, and we use them nationally and internationally. So we actually interviewed our stakeholders, our COP members who represented our target audiences. And we actually were intentional about not putting them on YouTube by design because we wanted to develop curriculum modules with them and control the content. So we used them as a teaching tool, and we presented at like the AAMC conferences, National Healthcare for the Homeless Council, Beyond Flexner, and others. So the way we do ours, our senior scientist who's in the room, Dr. Armandala Ramesh, leads the group. So we get the information, then we convene a COP, and then we develop clinical vignettes. And so that's how we do ours here at one of the centers that we lead at Meharry.
And so I think that's interesting. So I didn't present this study, but a study out of Harvard assessed dental students, and they found that dental students who even had access to this proprietary, like things like clinical vignettes or clinical training modules through their institution, were still opting to use YouTube as a source for information to learn about these clinical procedures, despite having evidence-based materials at their disposal. And when asked why they were doing that, it was mostly ease of access, and also a desire to explore broader opinions and techniques. So I think that's a very interesting point that I've looked into as well.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Burns, we don't have any questions. We got one more question in the room. Here we go.
Okay.
Oh, what happened with Hannah? Do you
So
want to?
Hannah went on to be a major success. I mean, as you saw, she got a Pronamel toothpaste contract. Despite the information that she was spreading to be misinformation, she has an authentic following and people trust what she says and they value her stories, and she's made tons of money off of sharing the story about her dental experience. Now, what's happened with her oral health as a result of extracting her teeth, that I don't know. And I don't think that we'll probably hear, but maybe in the future.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you again for joining. We truly appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. For everyone on, please, if you will click the survey link that's in the chat, we would love to get your feedback, and I will turn it over to, I will close us out this evening. So thank you all again for joining, and thank you, Dr. Burns. We will share your social media handles on our page. Have
Thank
a
you.
great night,
Have a
everyone.
good night.
All right, thank you.